What do you believe right now that's making you feel this way? And when you analyse it, you realise how irrational you can be at times.
Every single one of our major customers and minor customers all shut their doors overnight.
It's not sales per se, but the outcome of it is because people get to know you, they get to see you.
Making those efficiencies to maximise service profits as well as just product profits.
When you lose the enthusiasm, that's the point to move on.
Scaling up a business isn't easy. If it were, we wouldn't have less than 4% of businesses scaling beyond 10 employees or around £1 million turnover level, and less than 1% beyond 50 employees. But the contribution that we make as owner-managers to our economies is immense and should never be underestimated, yet it can be a tough gig for all of us at times. And only other business owners truly understand the challenges that we face. And through ScaleUp Radio, we aim to help make things a little easier. We interview guests who have been where you are now and may have faced some of the challenges that you are facing. And they offer their thoughts and advice on what has worked for them, as well as what didn't. And we've also combined many of the lessons from these interviews and also through working with hundreds of owner-managers over the last 10 years or so into a practical scale-up handbook that we've called the Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System, or ESUS. And it's for owner-managers like you and me as we navigate our own scale-up journey. And you can order a copy through your favourite online book retailer or by going to all the W's, esusgroup.co.uk, www.esusgroup.co.uk. Welcome to ScaleUp Radio. In this episode, I sit down with Steve Rawlingson, who is the CEO and founder of Samuel Knight Group International, and join us as we explore the incredible success of his company. It really is a tremendous journey that he's been on in the last few years. And they have a focus on recruiting into the renewable energy and sustainable transportation sectors. So we discover some of Samuel Knight's flexible solutions, what's behind their impressive growth, and the challenges that Steve and the company have faced during that scaling, including hiring, financing, and maintaining culture across multiple offices and continents. And Steve shares his strategies for aligning values, for effective delegation, really important aspect of this interview, and also of investing in the business. And we also delve into Samuel Knight's expansion into the US market and some of the lessons learned along the way. So don't miss Steve's vision for Samuel Knight's future as $1 billion business and an exceptional workplace. So listen in now for really valuable insights on scaling up and building a sustainable future. Welcome to another episode of ScaleUp Radio. I'm here today with Steve Rawlingson, who is the CEO, the Group CEO and founder of Samuel Knight Group International. So, Steve, welcome to ScaleUp Radio.
Thank you very much, Kevin.
Fantastic to have you on. So, Samuel Knight, tell us what you do. What's it all about?
In short, we're a specialist engineering and technical recruiter into the renewable energy and sustainable transportation sector. 4 key businesses within the group now. So we've got Samuel Knight Technology, which works with green tech and clean tech companies. Samuel Knight Energy, which works with utilities, developers, and EPCs. We've got Samuel Knight Projects, which is more of an engineering firm. So that basically self-performs operations and maintenance work for onshore and offshore wind farms. And then we've got Samuel Knight Rail, which essentially supplies project manpower solutions into the sustainable transportation sector.
Brilliant. And what separates you from other recruiters that might be out there? What's led to your success, do you think?
That's a very good question. I mean, look, we haven't reinvented the wheel. You know, there's no point trying to pretend that we have. The average length of service from our management team that I pulled together when I launched Samuel Knight now has circa 40 years industry experience collectively between us, which obviously with that gives us gravitas and, you know, gives us a global reach for them, hard to find candidates. I would say the other thing is we've never diversified across our market sectors. We've always stayed true to our values in terms of working with our global community to really make a difference in achieving zero carbon emissions. And then I would say finally, the solutions that we offer our clients, we're quite flexible and we're adaptable to market change. We're quite flexible in terms of the solutions that we can offer to our clients. And, I'd like to think that we are subject matter experts across the markets that we work in.
And in terms of being flexible to your clients' needs, and what sort of things do you mean by that? Do you mean in terms of the business model, or the way that you make your money, or what sort of things?
Across the flexibility across all solutions that we offer to our clients. So, I'll give you an example. The offshore wind sector in the USA, huge skill shortage, and there's no experience within Massachusetts with building offshore wind farms. ScaleUp is one of few companies that has E2 status. And essentially what that means is we can freely employ people on ScaleUp's books and subcontract them services into the developers and the EPCs who have got experience with building offshore wind farms. So that's one solution. The other one is our global reach with them hard to find candidates that might not necessarily be on the market looking for a new role, but essentially in the market, which, that gives our clients that confidence to know that essentially we're always going to deliver. And we do always deliver. There's a few other solutions that we offer our clients as well in terms of fast tracking visa processes. And obviously now, fast forward from 2018, we've got a really big backer behind the business. So we're quite cash rich, and a lot of businesses use us for their working capital on projects, keeping them cash rich. And, and what that essentially allows us to do is payroll the workers weekly, and then essentially charge that client and invoice that client every 45 days with expectation that we would get paid 60 days. So that gives them, a working capital cycle, an extra 45, 50 days working capital cycle for themselves. Just to name a few, really.
Yeah, brilliant. So in terms of the proportion of the revenues then, so that sounds like a lot of that is placing candidates, placing people in companies. As a recurring revenue type model, I would imagine. Is that the bulk of your business, or is it also commission based for finding full-time employees for companies?
When I first launched ScaleUp, it was heavily focused around a contract labour model. Fast forward 10 years, I would probably say it's now 65% contract, 35% perm. We wouldn't call it perm, we call it professional recruitment services. So we work with our global community and global clients, and they'll come to us for senior mid-level engineering or technical experts, and we would charge a one-off fee for that individual, and go out there and find them people that can help them businesses scale and continue to grow.
Brilliant. So you founded the business something like 10 years or so ago. Is that correct? Or was it
March 2014, I founded it, yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think you've had fairly meteoric rise since then. So what's the sort of, can you give us an idea of the scale of the business now? I know you've got offices globally. So tell us about it.
So where do we sit today? So today we have a run rate of 35 million in sales. EBIT this year is probably going to be north of 2 million. We invest heavily. We still invest heavily into the business. If we normalise that EBIT, I'm guessing it would be significantly more. Offices in now Newcastle, head office, where I launched the business, London, Bristol, Chicago, Boston, and Dallas. And then we've got a view of launching California in the first quarter of 2024. And then probably sometime within 2024, early 2025, we'll look to set up operations within the APAC region.
Brilliant.
120, how many guys have we got now? We've got about 120 recruiters, all specialising in their core market areas. Board of directors now that essentially has, as I said before, the podcast essentially has around 40 years industry experience.
Yeah.
Institutional investments we raised in 2018 under Gresham Ventures. I think we were one of the first few recruitment companies that was under 5 years old that managed to raise private equity funds to help us scale and launch the US business.
Right.
And we continue, as I say, we continue to invest and scale as we did, in day one. We're still doing the exact same thing now.
Yeah. Fantastic. Really, really impressive growth and trajectory there, and lots of questions I'd like to explore. I'd really like to tease out from you some of those key lessons that you've learned. And there's something at the beginning. Did you set up with some other founders? Was there three of you originally?
So I started the business in a 3-man office in Newcastle, and I class the managing directors as founding team members, because I'm sure you can agree. You can't build a business of this scale and magnitude on your own. It takes a kind of like a team of individuals that all believe in the vision and the mission of what you're trying to create. And then founding team members were my first hires as recruitment consultants, trainee recruitment consultants, some of them. And in them 10 years that we've been established, they're now managing directors and shareholders of each one of the businesses that we've now got trading under the group.
Yeah. So what do you think led to that initial success? Because clearly you got your product market fit absolutely right. So what do you think was behind that?
Me being completely honest, I'd been in the recruitment sector, specifically in renewable energy, 10 years prior to setting up Samuel Knight. So it wasn't like I was coming into the market green with no clients or no kind of like reputation. If I think back through my 10 years career before setting up Samuel Knight, I'd progressed from a recruitment consultant all the way up to managing director of a FTSE 250 business. And when you get these individuals who go and start a business or start a recruitment company that maybe have 1 or 2 years experience, and they're not going to expect some of the challenges that maybe I was expecting anyway, because I'd already operated at a managing director level of a large corporation. So the initial success would have been down to, if I'm honest, my reputation in the market, my knowledge of the market, 10 years experience with that. There's that number one rule of if you want to be successful at something, spend 10,000 hours doing it. And I think I definitely served my purpose of doing 10,000 hours before I'd set Samuel Knight up. So it came down to the business was pretty much at the start built around me, but as we scaled and grew, it no longer was focused around me. It started becoming focused around Samuel Knight as an organization and the people that we employ and the people who have progressed throughout the last 10 years of their career,
Yeah, fantastic. So we tend to look at the kind of the stepping stones in the scale up journey with different stages. And so once we've those early stages, getting up to typically 10 to 12 employees, some often around about £1 million turnover. We look at, that's typically sort of the almost like phase one. Then there's another stage when we're trying to build out the senior leadership team, the senior management team, through to probably 20, 25 people. And then probably another one as we sort of go up to 50 and then beyond that as well. So maybe we could break it down a little bit like that and have a look at what
I didn't have any big audacious goal for Samuel Knight. I didn't set the business up with this kind of vision of being, a 1,000 man employee business. I'll be completely honest. That was not what I was. That was not my plan when I launched Samuel Knight. The reason I launched Samuel Knight is because the company I was working for prior to Samuel Knight, they were a very corporate, old school business that did things their way, and there was little flexibility or there was little autonomy to be able to make changes that you needed to change. So for me, my market, I was 100%, I've always worked in the renewable sector. And when I'd been there for about a year and a half, and, I'm talking, this business is a 3.5 billion, 5,000 employee company. And I knew that if I wanted to continue to add value to my clients, the chances were I needed to either move or set up on my own. And I was financially, I was in a position where I could do that. But the aspiration was never to build this big business and, be a £100 million turnover company or get to 100 staff. It was kind of like, I want to build a business that I'm proud of working, and the employees that I employ are proud to work with a good culture, and we all care about making change to the world in terms of working with our community to try and get to zero carbon emissions. But then what happened from 0 to 10 staff is I think I underestimated the kind of the respect that my client community had for me. I thought I'd probably, take 1 or 2 clients with me, but the more clients I at the start, I was turning work away because a lot of companies wanted to work with us because
Right.
I wasn't working in this big corporate company where it was about going in there and just making a placement. They knew that my view and not my aspirations, but the view of how I worked was always a partnership agreement. So more and more work kept being awarded to Samuel Knight. And then in year 1, but by the end of year 1, 1 year and 1 day old, we won a major contract with an EPC construction company that was electrifying the railway lines.
Okay.
So that was from 2014 to 2015. And to deliver upon that work, I knew I had to hire people. So at that stage, I think we were operating at around maybe 7, including myself, 8 staff. But this was, it was 200 guys needed in a very short space of time. And, I'd committed to delivering to this with a client that I'd worked with for the last 8 years of my career. So I knew I had to hire people. And that's what I did. I went out and I hired experienced people and graduates, and it was a huge success. We delivered to the contract. It was very profitable. And then there was an opportunity to do a team move with an individual who's now one of the managing directors called Rob Enright. And he came in and actually managed that account for us and started as a regional director and progressed his way up to managing director. And essentially, he runs and owns Samuel Knight Rail now.
Okay.
He was one of the first senior members of the management team that I actually hired in 2015. So he had his aspirations to grow and scale Samuel Knight Rail, and I had my aspirations to scale and grow Samuel Knight Energy, and we were working cohesively together, and there was a lot of cross-selling opportunities. And we're both quite ambitious in terms of wanting to compete with each other. I was going out and winning my work. He was going out and winning his work. We were making money and we were hiring, we were hiring good people. And that kind of journey from 1 year to 3 years, the challenge wasn't the hiring of good people. The challenge was probably around financing the business the correct way.
Right.
And they've always been Samuel Knight's challenges are, have we got the right financial levers within the organisation to allow us to keep growing? Because as you know yourself, the quicker you grow, the more cash it sucks out your business.
Yeah.
And you only run out of cash once. So, we've always got to make sure that we've got them cash flow forecasts in line with what our expectations are,
and especially, I guess, if you're taking people onto your books and you're having to pay them, and then
exactly. So it's never been a challenge of ours from year 1 to year 5. It's not really been a challenge in terms of hiring good people, because the team at that stage was probably only, we got from 10 staff, from me and 3 staff to 10 staff, 10 staff to 20 staff quite easily. Mm-hmm. It was probably from 20 to 40 staff. We had to look at attrition and make sure that we were, 1, hiring good people, 2, training them and retaining them as well. So there's been some challenges where we did have a London office and a few people left the organisation because they were headhunted to with better salaries. Obviously, we were growing organically, so there's only so much cash you have as a business that's growing organically. Yeah. I don't want to use a football analogy, but we were kind of like, at the time, we were more like a Newcastle United back then. And there was these companies who were like Man City's coming in and going, we know this guy's a top biller, we're going to offer him, 35, 40% more on top of his basic. And we just couldn't compete with that, especially down in London. We never really had that in Newcastle. So the scale of the business in terms of headcount, as any normal business, the attrition, obviously, when you're going from a 10-man team to a 40-man team, some people not necessarily would want to go down that journey, because when it's quite small and, and it's quite boutique and you're sitting opposite the founder and you're going out for a beer on a Wednesday night and a Thursday night, it's quite small and everyone knows everyone's business and it's like this family kind of environment. But, to get bigger and better, you've got to keep scaling and you've got to keep going. That's when my aspirations for the business started to change, where I was like, right, well, I don't want it to be this small business now after year one, because I knew we'd won this work. I knew we'd delivered to it. And I thought, well, actually, do you know what? We could probably do this again. And if we can mirror that, then, why can't we keep doing that? And that's exactly what we did. We won projects throughout the Middle East. We won projects throughout Europe. And economy of scale, we were just hiring good people to deliver to them projects. So the skills that we were looking for didn't necessarily need to be able to go out there and sell. We could train them that eventually. They just needed to be articulate, tech savvy, and understand how to engage with individuals and create that kind of desire to want to work on our projects that we were winning. And it worked.
Okay. So typically in fast growing companies, fast scaling companies, then we see the sort of challenges you've mentioned. So attrition is one, or retention. How do we keep good people? But also we've got the control aspect. How do we keep control of things and keep the quality high? But also then the culture. How do we started off, as you say, small. We've got a great little team going, but then as we grow, especially as we start to have more offices and if they're in different time zones as well, culture also raises its head. How do we keep that culture going? How did any of those particularly resonated with you as challenges?
Of course, yeah. I mean, when we launched the London office, my view was that it needed every office needed to have the same culture. We needed to have continuity across the whole of the business, where the culture down in Bristol, the culture in London was the same culture that we had in Newcastle. And that was probably one of the lessons that I learned, that actually the cultures don't necessarily need to be the same. The culture down in London, in the London office, when we had that, was completely different from the culture in the Newcastle office. It's a very sociable region, London. Like on a Tuesday night or a Wednesday night, it's quite normal to go out for dinner and have a few drinks with your friends on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday. You wouldn't necessarily do that in Newcastle, because the people that we'd employed in Newcastle were, they were in long-term relationships. Some of them had, young children. So Tuesdays or Wednesdays, they wanted to go home, spend time with the family, and continue to not shut off, because obviously we're a scaling business, but work from home. And that divide between the Newcastle, the Northern office and the South office, the culture, they weren't the same. So that was probably one of the lessons that I learned, was as long as the values aligned, and as long as everybody was on the same page, striving towards the same goal, the same mission and the same purpose, keeping that culture. The cultures were great. The cultures are great. The culture in Dallas, in the Dallas office, is amazing. Same in Chicago, same in Boston, same in Newcastle, same in Bristol. We don't have the London office anymore, but each office has its own kind of little culture, and that's grand. And when everybody gets together, it's one roof, one family. And, I think probably the pandemic has made it a lot easier to for businesses like mine, where working remotely and working over technology has made it the norm now. So it's quite normal to like sit and talk to somebody over Zoom or over Teams, and that's probably helped with keeping that kind of like culture, mission, and purpose. So now today, as we continue to keep scaling to 200 staff, 250, 300. I'm not too precious about having the same culture across every single office that we've got. As long as the values are aligned and they all know what our mission is and what our purpose is and where we're going.
Yeah, I get that. So how do you do that then? And how do you make sure that everybody really understands and lives by the values and the mission that
you start from the top-down model. I'm quite lucky that every single person that sits in a senior leadership position has been with the business for minimum of 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
You've spent a lot of time with me. And ultimately, as the founder, I create the DNA of the business. I created the DNA. It was me that created the values. It was me that, they have to be built around me, because ultimately I'm the founder, and that spreads. And then, the senior directors of the business, they've spent that much time with me that the values that I had are now their values. So they're sharing that with their management team, and their management team is sharing that with their consultants. Regular contact. So we have close-offs, monthly close-offs and quarterly close-offs. I make sure that I'm present in all of the offices, around per annum. Obviously, I'm a full-time single parent, so it's quite difficult traveling with a young daughter. But, I've got, people in the Dallas office, people in the Bristol office, and Chicago and Boston, and so forth. We get everybody together on a monthly basis, and we share what's happening across the whole group. So that's tech, projects, energy, and rail. And it allows everybody to come together and really understand that actually they might have this office with 25, 30 people in there, and that's got their own little working culture, and they spend a lot of time with each other, but they're also part of something bigger than that little than that office. And that works. That does work. And as I say, with COVID, it's quite the norm now to have regular updates with your staff over Zoom and Teams. It wasn't the norm before, but now, obviously, having a conversation with someone down in Bristol or someone in Chicago, it's really, really easy now, because it's acceptable that you just do it over Teams. You don't have to wait and jump on a plane and go over there and meet with them. So, we do MBRs, and we do our monthly and quarterly appraisals. And again, I make sure that I'm vacant. The other question that you asked was that control element, and making sure the quality of the work is there. The one thing that I learned quite quickly in my career prior to Samuel Knight was, you can't do everything. You can only, to grow and scale a business, you have to focus on that one core thing. What is that one core thing that will help your business grow and scale? And everything else, all these other little plates, if you can delegate that responsibility, it shows that you trust the people that you've hired. And, one of the biggest challenges for me was probably handing over all of the finances to my finance team. I've got one of the best finance teams in the recruitment sector now, in my eyes. I've got an amazing CFO. I've got an amazing finance director, 2 management accountants. My finance team is world class, and delegating that responsibility to them, I 100% trusted them. I didn't need, I didn't know them when they first started working with us, but I knew that I'd hired them for a reason, and I had to allow them to do their job. And my whole finance team now has been with me for 5 years minimum. And so I think if you focus on what I did, was I delegated, and I'm not shy of delegating responsibilities, because I think that control, that micromanagement control element, that's not going to allow you to scale or grow your business. I know what I'm really good at, and I know what I'm really shit at. And the things that I'm shit at, I just make sure that I hire really good people who they can do what I'm not very good at. So I know my skills are, working with clients, finding solutions, opening up new doors, looking at emerging market sectors, breaking down territories, launching new businesses in different countries, being the entrepreneur and the spokesperson of the business, whilst also creating that kind of leadership team and motivating my leadership team. And obviously, and keeping that regular, the journey that we're on, making sure that it's alive. It's not just a plaque on the wall. It's not just words on a wall. It's like it's there. We sleep, eat, and breathe it. So you can ask any of my team members or any of the guys that work with me what our mission is and what our purpose is, and they would 100% be able to say, our mission is to create one of the best companies to work for in the world, and our purpose is purely to work with our global community to reach zero carbon emissions by 2050. Simple as that is literally what our mission and purpose is. And they know that, and it's alive. We breathe it. So the control element, I've never really been a control freak, if I'm honest. It doesn't really sit well with me. I like being free to go off and do what I need to do. So
so you're able to, because you've got the right people around you, you're able to set the intent, as it were, rather than micromanage. They know what the intent is, and they can
absolutely. It's important to have the right management team around you. You surround yourself, and again, I'm sure anybody who's got a successful business will say the one thing that they really do is focus on the people element and surround themselves with really good people, and not be afraid of hiring people that are better than you. There's people in Samuel Knight that I'm better at certain things and they're better than me at certain things. But together, when you put us all together, when you put our management team together, you create this something really, really special where, we've all got a really good understanding of how to keep scaling and growing Samuel Knight. Surrounding yourself with good people and I guess creating that leadership function is key to any business's success.
Yeah. So what you mentioned the CFO already. Yeah. So what were some of your other key hires, and at what stage in your growth did you take them on?
Definitely I would say first off, my finance director, Lisa Whitwell. She was instrumental in the continued success of Sammy and I. We'd gone through some challenges where the finance function of the business wasn't as strong as the sales function. So the sales function was all guns blazing, winning work. We didn't really have any compliance or any control over the sale. Me personally, I didn't have any control over the sales function as such. I was allowing people to go out there and win work anywhere. And that compliance element wasn't there. So if the compliance element wasn't there, the control element wasn't there. We were winning work in bloody Libya and all places, and we were using debt to fund these projects. And then we find out 3 months later, after we've used maybe 250 grand's worth of the bank's money, that we might not be able to get paid. That was not a good situation to be in. So the key hire, I'd definitely say the first key hire was Rob Enright for the rail business, because without him, the contract that we secured down in the southwest, we probably wouldn't have delivered to it as well as we did without him. So that was 2015. The second key hire in the business was definitely, I would have to say Dan Kerr, who's the managing director of our energy business, because he was delivering to a lot of my work back in 2014. He's my longest serving, and I don't even like calling him an employee, because I look at Samuel Knight just as much as it is his business as it is mine, and I'm sure he'd say the same thing. So, but hiring Dan was a good move, because he was methodical, quite a calm, collective individual, whereas I was 100 miles an hour, let's get out the door, let's win work, and let's try and scale the business. So Rob Enright and Dan Kerr, two key hires. And then the finance element, bringing in Lisa to kind of fix the finance function. So it was the foundations of the business were correct for us to keep scaling. That was definitely a key hire. Operations, hiring a really good operations team was some key hires there with Alex Butler. He was definitely a key hire for us back in the day. He's basically a workhorse. He literally works so many hours, and he gets so much shit thrown at him, but he's just got this thick skin and this kind of demeanor about him where it's like, it's not a problem. I'll do whatever needs to be done for Samuel Knight to be successful. So he's the operations and compliance manager. And then, as I say, I've got a really good CFO, and he was instrumental in me being able to raise institutional investment in 2018 so we could scale the USA business, and that was Carl Moffat. So they're kind of like the key hires that we've done over the years. And then, recently we've hired some more amazing people that kind of strengthen the senior management team, because again, with experience, the more experienced people we hire, the more understanding and the more kind of gravitas we've got in terms of being able to keep pushing and growing. Because to scale from 1 million to 10 million is not difficult. Scale from 10 million to 20 million was a challenge.
Right.
But, your scale up starts slowing down a little bit. But if you sit and we think, right, well, this year a run rate saying 35 million, because we've had some, amazing wins at the start of this year that ultimately are going to add significant value to our sales. Once we hit that 50 million in sales, how I believe that the challenge to get from 50 million to 100 million there's a big difference there, Yeah. So to do that, you've got to surround yourself with even more better people who have been in businesses that have actually got that experience of scaling from 50 million to 100 million and what that actually means. So we've done some key hires again in 2023 that ultimately will add huge value to Samuel Knight Group in the next 12 to 18 months to allow us to keep scaling the business. We're not slowing down. We're just continually going to keep on scaling. That's my aspirations. It's the board of directors' aspirations. We don't pay dividends. We don't take money out of the business. Any money that we make, we invest it back into the business, into people, into technology, into marketing, being innovative with our solutions. It's constantly invest in Samuel Knight. Maybe one day we'll slow down, but not.
maybe. So how have you avoided, and it sounds like you've been very successful with this, and we've got a hint of the answer already, but how have you avoided getting sucked into what we often call the owner's trap, where that you create a business that's too reliant on you, if you like, and you become the bottleneck to various things? How have you managed to make sure that you haven't got caught in that trap?
I guess because I'm not precious about keeping everything underneath me and everything being in that bottleneck coming to me. It's just, look, I'd have to go back to my experience before I set up Samuel Knight. I know what great looks like. I've worked with, my career before Samuel Knight was 7 years in an AIM listed recruitment company. So I saw what great looked like there. There was some inspirational directors and leaders in that organization that taught me, not only how to be a successful businessman and how to win work and find solutions for clients, but also what delegation actually means. So I was taught that quite early on in my career as a young man. Then I went from a corporate company to working for an entrepreneur, and this entrepreneur had built, scaled, and sold, a very successful recruitment company to Hayes. And I worked with him for 2 years. And again, watching him, monitoring him, and watching how he operates, that was inspirational for me, because at no point was it about him. It was about us. So seeing that, maybe that was, engraved into my conscious mindset, and then going back into the corporate world and being part of an operating board of directors in a multi-billion organization. Again, I saw people delegating responsibilities and accountabilities, and what the directors and the leaders of the organizations were doing was focusing on core things that they knew could scale their business. So I took that mentality into Samuel Knight. And as soon as, don't get me wrong, for the first couple of years, it was a bottleneck, because it has to be, because if the business is going to fail, it's going to fail because of me, not because of the people that I've hired. Because, you start with a little bit of money. You're not going to go out there and hire, top-notch guys, because, if you want to hire these big hitters from day one, then, they're going to want to come in and they're going to want, they're going to look at you and go, well, if you're doing it, I'm going to do it. Or if you're doing it, I want a big slice of the pie. And next thing you know, you've got a bum fight between you and someone else, and it ends up becoming whose ego's bigger than someone, whose ego's the biggest. So for the first couple of years, it was a bottleneck. But then as soon as I started creating the leadership team, delegation for me was key. So it was never my aspiration to keep everything under my control. It was always about hiring really, really good people that were really, really good at what they were good at, so I could do what I'm really good at. Great. And how do you incentivize your senior leadership team? When we raised institutional investment, we put in place an EMI for key members of the team. Every single member of the statutory board has shares. I've either gifted him or diluted throughout the years to make sure that they've got their shareholding. And the aspirations obviously are to try and create an employee-owned business. And they know that whatever I've said over the last 10 years, I've always delivered. I've always been quite honourable in that. So if I've said I'm going to do something, I'll do it. And they know that, there's no ego with me. They know that, what we're going to achieve, we'll achieve together. And if that means, creating wealth for ourselves over the next few years, then, I want my team to walk out, if they do end up walking out, well, when they walk out the business, when they retire or whatever ends up happening, I want them walk out with, with that sense of achievement and the fact that they have created wealth for themselves. I never built Samuel Knight because, I wanted to be this multi-millionaire. I live a nice life. I've got a very normal life. And I want my team, the team that I love and respect, to have that same sense of ownership as what I've got. So the incentive there is that we're all in this together and we're building something of great scale. And it's not about an individual, it's about all of us. Brilliant.
So what have you learned, for example, about because obviously that's a key milestone when you went to raise money to take you into the States. So, what have you learned about that process?
It's long. It's a long process. I thought it was going to be quite quick, actually, but I remember I didn't even know anything about institutional investment. I just Googled it. I knew I wanted to launch in the US, and I knew that they're growing organically and using your own cash was going to take obviously with working capital and being a contract business, it was going to take time for that money to wash through. And in all fairness, I thought the board, the directors at this point, we needed that kind of that governance around us and that experience of what good really does look like. If we want to scale and we're all serious about this, we've got to bring in some real clout here because, there's only so much I know. There's only so much I'm a big believer in self-development, but I don't know if that's the same case for my managing directors because they're just too busy when they're back at home. They've got young children, so it might not be as easy as that for, go and do an MBA or go and do a master's. So that kind of process of raising institutional investment, again, I'll be honest, I'll hit it with a straight back, didn't really know what I was doing. Reached out to a couple of people and he mentioned a couple of funds. Again, didn't really know what I needed to do or how to do it. Google was a great help. Found a list of investors down in London. There wasn't that many in Newcastle at the time. And I put a brief document together with my up-to-date management accounts talking about who Samuel Knight are, what success we've had in the last 4 years. This was back then. And I got a reply off every single one of them saying, we want you to come and meet with us. And I think out of 10 emails I sent, I met with about eight investors. And then I reached out to one individual who built a really successful recruitment company in Newcastle. And he gave me some advice to go and speak to a corporate finance team. So I did that. I went and spoke to a corporate finance team, a chap called Paul Kaiser. And, he was instrumental in guiding me through that process, building us a business plan. Back in the day, if someone had said, build me a business plan, I'd have probably wrote a lot of stuff down about what Samuel Knight's going to do and how we're going to take over the world. Mm-hmm. Obviously, a business plan now, as everyone knows, is not that. It's, it's pinch points in the organization, year 1 to year bloody 5. On an Excel spreadsheet of how much money you're going to make. If I gave you 1 million, how much is that 1 million going to be worth in 5 years' time? So he helped me build that business model. It took 12 months. Patience is definitely one thing that I've learned from raising money. Don't be afraid of raising money. I was getting a lot of scaremongering when I was looking at raising investment. People saying, they're going to come in, they're going to take control over the company. You don't want to do it. They'll remove you as the CEO. And I'm like, well, why would they remove me as the CEO? I'm good at my job and my management team are good at their job. But there was a lot of scaremongering and that. And I didn't listen to it. I just went with it. And honestly, our institutional investor couldn't have asked for a better one. First 12 months to 18 months, they were there, they were guiding us. A chap called Steve Cornett, amazing guy. guided us through, some turbulent times with COVID and whatnot. And then we came out the back of COVID. He retired from the institutional investor we raised, and now we sit where our institutional investor no longer has a seat on the board. They don't get involved in the business. They've got a nice shareholding in the organisation now. I think they've got about 20% of the business, but they don't get involved. There is an element of support if we want to have a chat with him, catch up with him once, maybe twice a year, send him the ball pack every 3 months. So don't be afraid. I would say be patient. Don't be afraid of raising institutional investment. Don't listen to the scaremongers. If you choose a good investor, it's the best move you can possibly do, because without Gresham, we wouldn't have launched Samuel Knight USA. And Samuel Knight USA, within the first 7 months of trading in 2019, generated $10.7 million worth of revenue. We would not have had that revenue if Gresham hadn't have invested. Yeah. It took a year to close out the investment. We got a multiple of 10. So in my eyes, that shows us that they were, they were passionate about the business. They believed in me, but more importantly, they believed in the management team that we'd created.
Multiple of 10 times EBITDA, yeah. 10
times EBITDA, yeah, in 2018. And it was a good deal, it was a good deal. And they're still in the business to this day. And it was looking back at it, it was quite stressful towards the end when you're going through all of the due diligence, and you've got to be really clued up on, one, your numbers, and two, your strategy. Like, how are you going to grow this business? How are you going to continue to keep scaling? Thinking about your people, thinking about your strategy. How are you going to execute that strategy, and how much cash are you keeping in the business to make sure that you can keep investing? And as soon as we tick them boxes, it was an enjoyable process. It really was. Everybody celebrated. It was a monumental time for Samuel Knight, under 5 years old, raising some serious cash, and launching Samuel Knight USA.
Yeah,
it was
great.
It was a good process, if I'm honest.
And it's obviously been a success in the States. What have you learned about going into the US?
What have I learned? Geez, loads. Contract litigation, really important. Surrounding yourself with good legal team, getting the right insurances, learning each state, learning the time zones. When we launched the US in the middle of the pandemic from the UK. So actually making a phone call to a client to try and do a sales call, and you think, it's 10 o'clock here, it's going to be, it's going to be morning time in the US, and it's like 4 o'clock in the morning, so learn your time zones, have a good client strategy, have a good sales strategy, have a good marketing strategy, learn buyers' behaviors. Just because you're dealing with one client in the UK or in Europe, and that you want to go and target that same client in the US, their buying behaviors will definitely be different from the buying behaviors in the business in Europe. So create a sustainable marketing plan for growth. That marketing plan needs to be key. Get good legal team around you, get your right finances in place, and just believe, but be fearless and believe in yourself. We launched in the US, and I think we're one of few companies that actually put a spade in the ground and launched an international office in the middle of a pandemic, and it worked. It didn't break. It worked from day one. There's been challenges there with hiring people in COVID. We hired a couple of people who ended up becoming, jerk-offs, if I'm honest. We hired a couple of people remotely, which is never great. I hadn't met him, and it didn't work. There was a lot of bullshit coming from him, and you're like, I've seen this. I've been around. I'm a bit grey in the tooth now. So, you can spot that quite quickly. A few people, you've got to be careful with the people that you hire in the US. Personally, what I've found, what works successful is creating your management team from the UK who have spent time with you, be that for a couple of years, then allow them to relocate over to the US on an E2 visa through your organization, and allow them to hire their people. That works. Don't hire. We haven't hired anybody at senior level in the USA. We've hired someone at consultant level, a lady called Kenzie. Unbelievable. One of the best hires we've ever made. She now sits as a director of the organization. And she's only been with the company for 3.5 years, 4 years. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
One of the best hires we've ever done. But so, yeah, there's a lot of lessons. Look, if any of your listeners want to have a chat, what lessons I've learned in the USA, there's a book of them. Tell them, give me a shout.
Yeah, we will do. We'll certainly.
There's just too many to go through. They literally.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, there's some great lessons, but it's been an enjoyable process, and it's working, and we're happy with how things are growing there, and it's probably got more scalability now than any other part of the business.
Okay, cool. And you mentioned earlier on that your role has changed over the time. Can you summarize that for us? How has your role changed from when you started the business to where you are now?
Oh, wow. Well, when I started the business, I was a good salesperson. That was pretty much it. I'm not putting myself down. I was a clever individual, but I probably was more focused on business development rather than focused on working on Samuel Knight and building Samuel Knight. And again, because I was the striker and the business was built on my experience and built on, my kind of like my clients that I'd worked with for 10 years, I pretty much it had to be like that. So starting the business as a business development director, and I remember that was my job title. When I first started Samuel Knight, I didn't call myself CEO or I didn't call myself, managing director. I made sure that I had to progress in a startup for allowing me to have them goals where I was chasing myself. So, I was first few years business development, then moved into an MD's role, focused on emerging markets and getting institutional investment. As soon as we got institutional investment in place, launching the US, I then moved into the CEO's position. And now a lot of my time is spent with my management team on strategy, executing that strategy, hiring. I do a lot of hiring at mid-management to senior level. I want to make sure that the people we're bringing into this organization, if I believe in them, then the chances are my management team will believe in them. So I spend a lot of time hiring and ultimately spending time working on the business rather than working in the business. As I said before, a lot of self-development. What got me to where I am today, I'm a great believer in this. What got me to where I am today isn't going to get me to where I want to be. So I've just graduated from Oxford with an MBA. And I've just started a master's in psychology and business. So I'm self-developing myself because I know, from 2014 to 2023, that process of getting us to where we are now, to grow the business, you've got to grow the leader. Well, if I don't self-develop, how am I going to continually keep on scaling? So, I've spent a lot of time over the last 12 months self-developing myself, getting myself an MBA and getting my master's under me. And that's showing dividends to the business because it's strengthening, it's building my mindset in terms of, and then if it builds my mindset, it means I can build the management, the leadership team's mindset as well. And they're obviously self-developing as well. So my role's completely changed. It's not the same.
No, that's great. Again, you've mentioned your purpose, but what's the legacy that you want to leave behind with the business?
I honestly believe that Samuel Knight will be a $1 billion business in the next 10 years. I really do. I think the growth within the renewables business is huge. We don't even have 1% of that market. Clients like us. They respect our brand. They respect our purpose, our mission. We do work in partnership with them. It's not just a cliche. The legacy for me is to build something that ultimately will live forever and it can create wealth for anybody on a succession plan who takes a senior position in the organization, even when I'm not around. I believe that every business, for me, I know there's a train journey. I'm loving the journey. It's not about the destination for me. It's all about the journey. But I know there's going to be a point where, I'm not the best person to grow and scale Samuel Knight anymore because I don't operate. I like building things. I don't want to sit in a business, with my feet up with a fat cigar saying, yes, grand, I've achieved great things. I want to build things. I want to, I'm an entrepreneur. So the legacy for me is to create a business of real scale. Ultimately, one of the best companies to work for in the world. And that's defined by our staff. And it creates a succession plan of wealth for every single person that's employed by Samuel Knight that elevates themselves into a management position. And hopefully one day, you know, when I'm 65, 70, and I've got my grandchildren sitting on my lap and I'm telling them stories, I look in the Financial Times and I see Samuel Knight, you know, is one of the companies that's been floated and it's growing, and, you know, it continues to keep doing great things for the renewable sector. Who knows?
Brilliant.
Who knows?
Well, I certainly wish you all the best for that. So this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing your experiences and your insights. Are you all right for a couple of quick fire questions just before we close off? So if you go back to your younger self, what advice would you give yourself?
Don't be afraid.
Okay, brilliant. You're obviously do a lot of self-development. Any particular books or podcasts or other resources that you'd like to highlight?
What Harvard doesn't teach you. They Can't Hurt Me, David Goggins. I would probably say The Secret. You know, that's a great book. I'm a big believer in law of attraction.
Yeah.
Sexy Millionaire, Steve Bartlett, very inspiring guy at the minute. There's loads. I mean,
yeah,
Richard,
super.
Yeah, there's so many.
No, that's really good. Any apps or bits of technology that you found particularly useful?
Apps. Not really tech savvy, Kev, if I'm honest.
That's fair enough. No?
If you were asking my marketing team, they'd probably say these apps. Yeah. But you know, I've got an iPhone, but I wish I had a Nokia. I don't use apps, if I'm honest.
Brilliant. So you mentioned Stephen Bartlett, but who would you say has had the most influence on you as a leader?
Probably Andy Hardacre and Paul Beak. My first managing director in recruitment, great MD, changed my life, giving me an opportunity to break into business. Paul Beak, inspiring individual, built and scaled and sold some unbelievable businesses. Yeah. Continuously keeps inspiring me every time I speak to him. Yeah.
Brilliant. Fantastic. And you mentioned marketing a couple of times. What would you say is your most successful marketing or lead generation tactic to get more clients?
Successful marketing to get more clients. In my world, honestly, pick up the phone. Don't be afraid of picking up the phone and having a conversation with your clients. But our ad campaigns work quite well for us. Media videos work quite well for us, but you can never ever beat that. Look, the fact of the matter is, what we do in recruitment, it's a people's business. You can talk about AI, you can talk about tech systems, and you know, the amount of clients that I've done this for 20 years, the amount of clients I speak to who say, Steve, the one thing that we love about you and your guys is you pick up the phone and you have a conversation with us. There's none of this email bollocks. It's like, if I want to talk to you, you can pick the phone up and you can have a conversation with me. I do myself. If someone sends me, you know when it's a generic email, or you know when someone's just, you know, firing 50 emails to one individual, because it's like you've got your text there and then you name in a different color and you're like, bollocks, delete. So honestly, marketing for me, pick up the phone, have a conversation with your clients. Don't be afraid. It's a people, in my world, it's a people's business, and people buy off people.
Brilliant.
In terms of text and marketing, you know, LinkedIn, great. Ad campaigns, great. General marketing strategies, great.
Good. Fantastic. Is there anything that I've not covered that you think that our listeners should know about you and what you've learned?
I'm not a complex individual, if I'm honest, Kev. I'm just a normal guy, hardworking, trying to build something. No, I don't think so.
Any other key lesson? Anything that you think, you know what, I haven't said that was a big point, big learning.
Hire good people. For me, my key lessons in Samuel and I: don't be afraid of hiring good people, and delegate responsibility and accountabilities to them good people. Allow them to be successful in their role. Number 2, don't be afraid of raising debt or raising equity. It'll help you grow. Debt, essentially, you need levers. You need financial levers in your business. So don't be afraid of raising debt or raising equity. It'll pay dividends for you. And thirdly, don't look at your strategy like it's a blueprint. It has to be, you have to have the ability to change your strategy. And what I mean by that is, if it's not working, don't keep doing what you're doing, and look at changing your strategy. It doesn't need to be a blueprint. Don't be afraid to change it. And you know what? Work hard. That's it. Just work hard.
Brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much, Steve, for being my guest today. If people would like to get hold of you, you mentioned you'd be prepared to take some questions around the US,
Absolutely.
whatever. If people like to get hold of you or find out more about
LinkedIn,
Samuel Knight.
just go on LinkedIn. Yeah, Samuel Knight, LinkedIn, Steve Rawlingson, not Stephen. It's Steve Rawlingson with a G, LinkedIn. I'm happy to answer any questions or help anybody.
Perfect. You're a star. Thank you very much indeed, Steve.
You're welcome, Kevin. Thank you very much.
I hope you enjoyed that discussion, and if you're building and scaling your own business, you might well be interested in our book, The Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System. And it's exactly what it says on the tin. It's a practical handbook around scaling a business in a structured way. And you can order a copy on all your favorite online retailers, including an audio version, or you can find it and other supporting resources on our website, www.esusgroup.co.uk. That's esusgroup.co.uk, which is esusgroup.co.uk.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.